Welcome back. Let's continue working on the boat and see if we can't get this wiring taken care of. So when we left off, I was just talking about how the wiring in here is just kind of a nightmare, and there was just some weird stuff going on. Like, the power for this bilge pump was tied into the signal for the fuel sending unit that was supposed to go up to the gauge. I don't know what was going on, but it was pretty weird. Anyway, got it all pulled apart, and I was just testing stuff here to make sure that it does work. And I'll show you guys here. The bilge pump does actually work, so I figure, I mean, it's kind of a pain in the ass to get to, so it would sort of make sense to replace it with the fuel tank out while I have it out. But, you know, I mean, at the moment, I don't know if you guys can see that or not, but it works just fine. So I'm thinking I'm just going to toss it back in there and run it for now. I mean, there's no reason not to. Just have to wire it correctly. And then same case for the fuel sending unit. It appears to work just fine. It was just wired incorrectly. So I'll show you guys how that's supposed to be wired. So I'm not 100% sure on how this works, but I believe this is just some kind of a variable resistor. And then as the float moves up and down, that somehow changes the voltage that the gauge sees, and that's what moves your needle back and forth. Might be a different way that works, but I mean, that's generally how they usually work. I don't know if I'm wrong about that and you guys know exactly how these work, let me know. But anyway, there's 3 wires going to it. Just like anything else, you have your positive and a ground, and then this gray one here is the signal that goes back to the gauge. So we have that tied into the gauge. And then right now I just have jumpers on the gauge because the gauge itself needs power and ground. So let me hook that up. So now that we have that wired correctly, as we move our float back and forth, you can see our fuel gauge actually works. So that's a plus. Just saved myself about 70-80 bucks there, not having to buy a new fuel sending unit, bilge pump and gauge and whatnot. So let's see what else we can find. So here we are back behind the dash looking at the back of the gauge cluster, and it's, like I said, just a freaking mess back here. And there's a couple wires that have obviously gotten hot at some point. This here is power to all of the gauge lights, and you can see, hopefully you can see there, the wire is actually just about melted out of the insulation. So got to pull that off, and well, hopefully in the process I can figure out what was wired wrong and why that was getting so hot. But I'll spare you guys the boring gritty details, but I'm going to spend the next couple hours back here just trying to clean this up and figure out what's needed and what's not, and I'll bring you back in once it's all tidy and looking a little bit nicer. And this is the pile of wire that I pulled out of there. All this stuff was just in there not doing a damn thing, so feels good to have that pulled out and cleaned up a little bit. So got everything looking a little bit more organized up underneath here. Got rid of quite a bit of excess wire that just didn't need to be in here. Verified that everything's working. Checked out quite a few of these switches and ended up ordering 6 more that we're gonna just go ahead and replace them all, because the one thing I can't figure out is this green wire right here. It's supposed to be, I think, a ground wire just for everything, for the switches and then the gauges and whatnot. But every time you hook the battery up, that wire basically just vaporizes. So checked out the wiring diagrams for those switches and whatnot, and they appear to be wired correctly. So I don't know if one of them's maybe shorted internally or what's going on there. But like I said, ordered some new ones, so let's go ahead and get those installed, and then we'll figure it out from there. I did verify that it's not anything to do with the gauges, because when I hook up the battery with the switches disconnected, this wire, you know, everything's fine underneath here, but as soon as you hook it up and then connect the battery, you get smoke coming out from underneath here. So something can't be quite right there. So let's go ahead and get those switches replaced. Alright, we got our switches all wired in. Everything actually works the way it's supposed to. Nothing's on fire. And they even come with these nifty little labels that you can toss on there. And I'm thinking that these are actually supposed to go over the light, so the words light up when the switch is on, but kind of like them off to the left like that a little bit better. So, but yeah, you can see that works. And that works. And we got our dash lights. That'll be kind of nice. I'm going to see if I can get some LEDs or something to go behind there too, something that's probably a little bit brighter. And I got bilge pump that's wired in, but not, I mean the wire's running back there, but the pump's not actually hooked up yet. But obviously that works too. And then these two right now are just spares, and this is going over to power on the radio. At least I think it is. Yeah, there it goes. Got like dual on switches for that. Send power to it and then actually use the switch on the radio itself. But anyway, that's all working, so that's good. Just for reference here, this is the wiring diagram those switches come with. I went with wiring method B here. This is so the light comes on when you switch the switch on. A, I believe, will have the light on all the time. But I didn't want to end up, you know, draining my battery like that, so we went this route. But this makes a hell of a lot more sense than those other switches that were in here. Much more straightforward than those old switches seemed. I'm actually thinking a couple of those may have been shorted because what I was getting on the meter there on the tabs just wasn't making any sort of sense. And like I said, that one ground wire kept getting fried. So I think we're better off going this way, and now we have red LEDs too instead of green LEDs. So it sort of matches the rest of the boat. I was testing out the lights. I couldn't get the bow light to work, so I'm guessing that's got to be burnt out. I did take this apart and I checked it, made sure there was power up here, and there was. So bulb didn't look burned out, but let's just replace it anyway and see what happens. I got these little LEDs, hoping they'll be a little bit brighter. Hopefully they actually work. They should, but let's find out. Well, I wasn't getting voltage up here. Not sure why. Through a series of events, ended up pulling the wire all the way back to the dash. Wasn't what I had intended to do or wanted to do, but that's what happened. And now I'm just trying to pull it back. I think I finally got it. Yep, there we go. And I was reading voltage back at the dash, so now that we have the wire back up where it belongs, let's check it again and see if we still have voltage. I reconnected it to the switch. There is one old connection there that I didn't redo, so I redid that. So let's see what happens here. Okay, if there isn't voltage up here, I'm going to lose my shit. I don't know how I could have voltage back at the dash, but not up here. So we're still not showing any voltage up here. Best thing I can figure is maybe this wire has a break in it. I mean, that meter is reading voltage elsewhere, so I don't think that's the problem, even though it's a Harbor Freight DVM. It's still kind of working. So I'm just going to run a new wire, and we'll just hope that solves the problem for us. Hopefully I can run just the one here and that'll pull through relatively smooth. Alright, we have new powers and ground run. Let's see if this looks any different now. Hey, we have what we need. Alright. Yeah, so I don't know, maybe that other wire had a break in it or something, but this is looking good now. You can see this socket's got a number of different splices in it too, so we'll cut that up closer to the end here and get rid of all those splices. I'll have to put some new ones in there, but at least we'll know that ours will be good. Shrink these guys up. And we have light. Awesome. Let's get that put back all the way. Picked up a pack of those LEDs, so I figure I might as well swap out the stern light right away. That way we can match. And it should be a little bit brighter too anyway. Well, on to what could quite possibly be the most important part about the boat. Cup holders. You know, I think this is the one out of the 4 that works, but we're going to go ahead and replace all 4 of them anyway, just so they all match. You know, I've been going around all these, taking second looks at them, and I don't think any of them are actually broken. I think the springs are just out of alignment or out of place. So far I'm 1 for 1 on fixing them. Let me see if I can get this one going too. So I'm going to call this 2 for 2. It does work. It needs a little bit of an assist. Had to kind of make a spring for that. Turns out old snowmobile exhaust spring might be a little bit too rigid, but I'm going to call that a win. We'll call it 1.5. 1.5 for 2. Not too bad. Just needs a little bit of help. Call that a win. This last one here pretty much works. The spring on the bottom's just out though, so the bottom doesn't come down all the way. Let's pull that one off. Let's see if we can get that one straightened out too. I don't know why, I thought those were broken, but I guess not. Well, I have everything wired in back there now. I just finished up the bilge pump and the sending unit for the fuel tank. So it is time to try and get these controls put in place. Alright, we are all connected and wired in back there. We just have to put power to the controls now and we should be good to go. So this control set is a Yamaha 703, and according to the internet there's 2 different versions of this. There's a 10-pin which is supposed to support trim and tilt, and a 7-pin which doesn't support trim and tilt. And you know, as is my luck, apparently I have some sort of bastardized version of the 7-pin because it is a 7-pin, but I have trim and tilt. So these plugs right here I know are for the trim, and these are the standard 4 that you'd normally have on either version. And I believe the red is going to be constant power to the battery, black is our ground, yellow should be 12 volts with key on, and then green I believe should be our tack signal. So we're just going to wire in power and ground to start out with. I'm probably going to run the 12 volts up to the dash just to, the only thing that I really want to come on with the key is the fuel gauge, so I'll probably run that to the fuel gauge instead of having constant power there from the battery. But like I said, let's get power and ground run to it and we'll see what that lights up for us and go from there. So as I kind of suspected, after we had power and ground run to that, everything just works the way that it should. And then like I said, this is going to be, this yellow line here is going to be 12 volts with the key on. So I'm going to run that up to the dash, and then this is going to be our tack signal. Green will be tack signal, which we'll have to run up to the dash as well. And like I said, everything else on the internet that I can find says this is supposed to be trim up, trim down, and trim neutral. But you know, I guess I could, you know, for the sake of completion, take this thing off and take it apart and see where those go and what they do. But honestly, I don't really give a shit because as it sits now, I mean, everything works. So I don't really have much to worry about. And I mean, we got, you know, so to be honest, couldn't tell you what those are for, but like I said, at this point, it doesn't really matter. And I'm going to be doing a full tune-up on the motor here, but I think I'm going to make that its own separate video. So for now, let's move on to the hull. I want to get these decals off of here because those are not actually the correct decals for this boat. I believe that decal is actually for a early to mid 90s boat. So I want to get that off of there. I'm going to buff the hull and then order the correct decals for an 89 instead. Well, now that we got that nice and cleaned up, we're going to blend that all and bring all this faded nasty orange looking color right back down to this nice rich deep red. My favorite part, if I have a favorite part in doing all this, I guess. Well, I gotta be honest, I did think that was gonna blend a little bit better than it did, but I didn't get the most aggressive cutting compound that I could have. So maybe that was my mistake there, but still, that looks pretty damn good. I don't know if you can tell on camera, but that's got a nice, beautiful shine to it. And I guess, yeah, you can kind of see, you guys can see that, can't you? That's nice and reflective now. I'll get you a couple different angles here in a second, but yeah, that's gonna clean up nice, I think. Well, there's one side down. Not looking too bad, actually. Got quite a bit of shine left in it. Gonna go ahead and do the other side, and then we'll do the stern, and probably save the top side for after we have the seats in and everything kind of finally buttoned up. I was gonna save this for the end, but I just couldn't wait any longer. I just wanted to see what that hull was gonna look like, all shined up. Definitely looks a hell of a lot better than what it did. Well, the whole thing shined up pretty good. You can kind of get a pretty good view there of what it looks like now, nice and reflective. Like I said, it could have went with something a little bit more aggressive and took a little bit more of the red down to the nice bright color that's beneath it, and, you know, blended where the stickers were back there. But all in all, it really doesn't look that bad. I mean, maybe in the future when I do this again, I'll get something a little bit more aggressive, but you know, there were a couple spots too where I was starting to burn through the gel coat a little bit. So, I mean, that was just me spending too much time in one area. But the more aggressive that you get with the cutting compound or wax, whatever you want to call it, the more of a risk you run of doing that. So, but I'm pretty happy with this. It looks damn good. Went ahead and did the top side too. You can see nice and shiny there. Hopefully that comes across on camera. Kind of spared you guys some of the more boring parts there. I went ahead and put the seats back in too. And I just took a Sharpie and went over the Larson logo there, because those actually, you know, when this boat was brand new, those were actually embroidered, you know, so there's like little remnants of thread there and stuff yet, but I'm not going that crazy with it to try and, you know, redo all the seats and that stuff. But so I think that makes it look a little bit better, and went over the logo down there too. Gives it a little bit more of a complete, less destroyed look, I guess. But let's show you some of the other stuff that I did while you guys were away. Yeah, so as far as the interior goes, you really didn't miss a whole lot. Just went ahead and put the seats back in after I got all the wiring buttoned up underneath there with the controls and whatnot. And then I did put a battery switch in back here. So that's all that is there. Just a real simple 2-position battery switch, just on and off for one battery. You know, there's quite a variety of switches like that you can get on Amazon, and I mean anywhere on the internet nowadays. But you know, I'm sure the style that most people are used to seeing is the big round red circle that's got, you can connect, I think, like 2 or 3 batteries up to that one, but this boat's just too small for something like that. This thing was the right size. I'm only ever going to have one battery in here, so that just kind of felt right. So like I said, it's really just off right now, and then turn that way is on, and that's all there is to it. I think the wiring's fine, but still just kind of nice to have, you know, peace of mind switch like that. That way your battery's not going to mysteriously drain on you. And I did order a battery box for this guy, but it's actually, I mean, it's just too big to fit in there. It's a Group 24 battery box, the right size for that battery, but with the way this cover goes on, You know, this guy over here, with the way that sits in place, there's just not enough room in there for the box to fit properly, so she's just sitting out like that for now. I might put something down around the bottom just to make sure it stays in place where it's at, but I don't think it's going anywhere for now, so gonna leave that alone. So I mean, on the inside here, that's really kind of all there is to it. There's not much left to do. You know, there's a couple soft spots in the floor. It's a little spongy right here up in the front. And then I don't know what's going on back here. I think I pointed these out before. It's kind of hard to see, but it's not soft by any means, but there's like ridges in the floor, almost like the floor is like delaminating. And over here, I guess you can kind of step it down a little bit, but like I said, it's not soft to the point that I'm really worried about doing anything with it. So I think for now, we're just going to leave that alone, and we're just going to run it this year. I mean, in the future, if I have to, I'm not above putting a new floor in this thing. I mean, it'd be pretty fast. It's not a big boat, and I mean, with that in mind too, I don't know how long I'm going to keep this thing. I'll keep it for this summer for sure, and at least until I get that other outboard rebuilt. But probably should have went with something a little bit bigger than a 15-footer. So anyway, next up, we got a 300-hour service kit for that engine back there. We're going to go through that thing tip to tail and make sure she's in good condition. But real quick, before we get started on that, I want to throw this bimini top on here and just see what that looks like and how it fits and how it all goes together, just because that's kind of driving me nuts. I want to see that thing on the boat before I get too deep into anything else, so let's do that. Well, I'm not too sure what's front and what's back on this thing. I think I have it the right way right now, but I guess we'll find out. There we go. That doesn't look too bad. Took a little bit of screwing around to try and get the lengths right on all the tie downs and everything. And these ones in the back here weren't put on properly. They were looped all over the place and it was all screwed up. But looks pretty good now anyway. I actually had to flip it around a couple times. Wasn't sure which way was the front and which way was the back, or which end was the front and which end was the back, but I'm pretty sure that's correct now. I guess even if it's not, it fits damn good this way, so I'm gonna run with that for now. Alright, let's get to the maintenance on the Yamaha. Let's go ahead and get the cover off first. I'm not sure what this takes for oil. I think it's about 2.5 quarts. I know there is a label on here. Yeah, looks like it takes 2.2 US quarts is what it says. Alright, drain plug should be a 14 millimeter, I believe. And it's going to be right up in here. And to try and keep things interesting, we're going to try and drain this into this old WD-40 jug, see how much of it we can spill. I don't know if you guys saw that, but that almost turned disastrous. It's filling up the funnel a bit quicker than it could drain. But I think we're going to be alright now. Alright, I think we let that drip long enough, and when the drain plug goes back in, it does come with a new crush washer in the service kit. So we'll put that on and get this guy snugged back down. And before we refill it, I guess we'll go ahead and toss the new oil filter on there. Minimize the mess if we can. I might need to go get a filter wrench for that one. This guy gonna fit? Kinda, just barely. Not enough, not close enough to make a difference. I think we got it broke loose, maybe. Not quite enough room in there for a strap wrench or any other kind of wrench, and I don't have the right size filter wrench. She's going though. We got her, I think. Still, no reason for those to be that tight. And in case anybody's wondering, there's a part number for the new one. And I want to say this is actually the same oil filter that goes in my 400 Kodiak over there, which I believe, there we go, yep, ATV YMF 400A 2000-04. I believe that would be my Kodiak, so that's interesting. I never noticed that before. Pretty sure it's actually cheaper if you order the one for the four-wheeler than if you order it for the outboard. I could be lying to you, but I'm pretty sure that's... I remember seeing that when I was looking for one for the four-wheeler, that the outboard was more expensive for some reason, but it appears they're the same filter. I'm going to try and pre-fill this filter just a little bit, or at least as much as I can, and hopefully not lose it all out when I try and put it back in there. I know it's probably not 100% necessary, but it does give you a little bit of peace of mind. I know this thing's been sitting for a while, so any little bit helps. I actually didn't do too bad. A couple drops there and that was all. Make sure that's nice and snug so I struggle getting it off again next time. And then we'll fill her back up with our Yamaha lube. This does come with 10W30. I think there's actually a couple different options that you could order for weight, but this is what the engine specs, so that's what we're going to go with. Spec plate on the motor, like I said, says 2.2 quarts. We're going to pull it after 2 and see where we're at. And that's kind of what I figured. Looks like we're about full after 2. And this is obviously, you know, without running the engine, so... Sorry, I'm kind of knocking you guys around here. Not sure how well you can see that, but we're sitting right about there at the tip of my thumb, and that is the completely full mark right there. So we got like 3/8 of an inch to spare there. So we're going to leave that alone for now, and then once we get it out and run it on the muffs, we'll check it again and make sure we stayed full. Alright, let's try and take a look at this fuel filter. I'm assuming that this is just going to thread off on the bottom, but I'm probably going to have to pull that nut first, I think, before I can get down in there. There's our old fuel filter and new fuel filter. This one actually doesn't look too bad. Might hang on to it as a spare, not that I'd really need one, but you never know. When it's in good enough shape, I might as well hold on to it, I guess. But for now, let's go ahead and put the new one back in there. Alright, and then to finish off the top side, we're going to go ahead and change out this thermostat and the gasket. She does look a touch crusty in there. And this is not a saltwater engine, never been used in saltwater, but there's still chunks of garbage in there, so probably wouldn't hurt to do a flush on this thing in the future. I'm going to try and clean that out as well as I can while I have this out. I think that's probably clean enough for now. Let's get the new one popped in there. It looks like this should open around 60 degrees Celsius, so maybe we'll take the old one and test it and see if it's still good. We'll hold on to it as a spare, if so. Alright, well that does it for the top side. We can move on to the lower unit. Hoping you guys are going to be able to see this. Doing my best here. I already have the bolts pulled out of this. Actually, I took this lower unit off, geez, probably almost a year ago now, just to check it out, and I haven't touched it since, but the impeller was definitely junk, the old one was, and the kit that you get comes with absolutely everything you need. Down to the wear plate. The only thing that it doesn't come with is this housing itself. So we'll pull that off for now. And it looks like we got everything come with it. Fresh gasket. Followed by the wear plate. Alright, our next step is going to be to put the impeller housing back on, but before we put it back on, we kind of have to rebuild it here with all of the extra parts that the kit comes with. So let's pull off that O-ring. Get that guy out of there. And then there's this one last big rubber grommet, O-ring, whatever you want to call it. Gotta pull that out of there too. You get a new one of those in the kit. This guy right here. And it is directional when you put it back in. The wider opening goes towards the top. Press that guy in, and then we can send our new upper housing home. And then lastly, the new O-ring. And thankfully, the housing has like little retention, I don't know what you want to call them, gaps or tight points, whatever. They help to hold the O-ring in place, keep it in the groove so it doesn't pop out on you. Okay, so that is, for all intents and purposes, rebuilt, ready to go back on. So let's take that and then head back over to the back of the boat. And then before we put this back on, just going to take a little bit of grease and line the inside of the impeller housing. That'll help it go back together, and then when you start up the motor on the muffs or in the water, it'll keep things lubricated for a little bit while you get a little bit of water up in there so you don't destroy the impeller on your first time out. Alright, and then to get everything lined up the correct way, we're going to push down on the housing and then turn the shaft clockwise, and we should be set to go there. And that does it. We should be all rebuilt. Alright, we're all bolted up there. You can see I had to kind of futz with the forward, neutral, and reverse position just to get the lower unit to draw all the way up into the mid-leg there, but she's on there and bolted down, so we're good to go. Let's move on to doing the last thing on the list, which I believe is the lower unit gear lube. Alright, let's finish up the lower unit, get that gear lube drained out, get some fresh stuff in there. We'll pop the top plug first, just so she can breathe as she's draining. Let's see, where's the bottom one at here? That smelled pretty old, and there was a little bit of water in there too. A little bit of junk on the magnet on the plug too. Hopefully not anything too serious. Doesn't look too serious, but definitely needed to be changed. I don't know what weight the new stuff is that they sent me in this kit, but that seemed super thin for what I would have imagined should be in there. So yeah, the new stuff is 80W90. That should be a hell of a lot thicker than this. I don't know why that was so thin, but like I said, there was a little bit of water in there too, so hopefully that's not going to be a consistent problem. I'm not really sure how that would have got in there, unless there was a seal out or something like that, but who knows. And these plugs too, you really can't get these screwed up, because the one on the bottom, like I said, has the magnet on it. The one on the top does not have a magnet on it, so don't have to worry about that. That kit also did come with 2 new crush washers for those plugs. So once this is done draining, we'll get it refilled, get those plugs popped back in there, and then I think that's pretty much it. That's all we're going to have to do. Pretty sure this is the last step. Alright, we're just about done dripping there. Yamaha sends you this in a quart jar, or quart jug. So the best way to do this is to get one of these little pumps. I just picked this up at Harbor Freight, but stab that in the top of there, and then you can pump it in through the bottom. You know, that's the right way that you're supposed to fill these two. Pump it in from the bottom, and then it comes up out the top. That way you don't have to worry about air pockets in there or anything like that. If you try and pour it in through the top, it's just going to be, it's going to be impossible to get it full without sitting there for days waiting for all the air to purge. Some of these do come with like a little valve that you can actually insert into the hole, and I don't have one of those, so it might get a little bit messy, but I think we'll get her. All right, you watch for that coming out right there. And I probably should have microwaved this first, or at least tried to, because she's going to be a little bit thick. Alright, there we go. Gonna give her a couple more pumps, make sure we got good flow coming out. Minimal air bubbles. Yeah. What a mess. There's probably a better way to do that. Like I said, if I had that valve that's supposed to thread into the hole, that would have gone a lot better, but it's full anyway. Now I just got to clean up a little bit of gear lube, that's all. Alright guys, well I think that's going to do it. That pretty much sums up the $300 service of the Yamaha F60. Still probably wouldn't hurt to pull the carbs and go through those. Not sure if I'm going to do that yet. Knowing me and my OCD, I probably will. But I think I'm going to end this video here. I'm sure it's long enough. I got quite a few other things to get to here in the shop yet. But I think we finished this one up just in time. The weather's supposed to be getting better here in the coming weeks. We had that one week where it shot up into the mid 80s all week long, but I mean, at that point in time, we still had like a foot of snow on the ground, so didn't really get a chance to get out and do a whole lot. But by the end of the month here, looks like we're going to be getting back up into the mid 60s, so hoping to get this thing out as soon as I get a free weekend where the weather cooperates. But like I said, I think we're going to call her good for now. Looks a hell of a lot better than it did when I brought it home. And I'm hoping this outboard swap turns out pretty good. I don't think it's going to reach anywhere near the top speed that it would have with that 85 horse on there, obviously. But, you know, it'll take some time over the next year probably and rebuild that and eventually get that put back on here. And this 60 will go back on the aluminum boat sitting outside that it came off of, if I can ever get a title for that. Should just be a matter of filling out the paperwork there, but just haven't done it yet. Coming up next, I think we're going to switch to the jet ski sitting over there in the corner, see if we can get that thing running. I have no idea what's going to be wrong with that. So I think that's going to do it. Thanks for watching, guys. I greatly appreciate it. We'll see you in the next one. Have a good one.